Hey, are you a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional? If so, we want you to apply to be a featured guest on our show. My name is Adam Torres, and I host the Mission Matters series of podcasts. I've recorded over 3,000 episodes, and we are just getting started. How do you know if you'd be a good guest to be on the show? Well, only one way to find out, and that's to apply, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We want guests that have a story to tell, guests with a brand, a product, or a service that can benefit my audience of listeners. If this sounds like you, go to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. I'd love to talk to you and get to know more about your story. Again, head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, now let's get into the show. Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Peter Voss on the line, and he's a founder, CEO, and chief scientist at Aigo.ai. Peter, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, Peter. So I'm excited to talk about Aigo.ai today and some of the work you're doing there. For people that have been watching the show for a long time, you know I like talking about chatbots, and I'm excited that we get an opportunity to do that today with Peter and to go through, some of the things that him and his team are doing. But Peter, just to get us started, I like to start this episode like we start them all with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Peter, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. So that's our mission here. Peter, what mission matters to you?
Well, that's easy. To help create artificial intelligence that will improve the lives of everyone. To have AI that can actually do things for us, help us make decisions, and just generally improve our lives. That would go as far as having AI that can do research, whether it's medical research or to deal with, pollution or energy or whatever, but just generally to create AI to improve life. And that's my mission for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. Love bringing mission-based entrepreneurs, executives, and experts on the show to share why they do what they do. So excited to go further into this, Peter. And we're definitely going to talk more about, AI and chatbots and just overall what's going on. But maybe just start off with giving us a little bit more about your background and how you got started on this path.
Yeah, certainly. So I started out working as an electronics engineer. I started my own company providing electronics for industrial applications. And then I fell in love with software. And my company turned into, from an engineering company to a hardware company to a software company. I developed an ERP comprehensive ERP software system. And the company was quite successful. We went from the garage to 400 people and an IPO. So that was super exciting. And that was sort of my introduction to, getting deeply involved with software. But what I realized is, as proud as I was of my software, it was really actually pretty dumb. If the programmer didn't think of anything of some particular case, then it would just crash or give an error message or something. There's no common sense in software. And we all experience that. So when I exited the company, I decided to embark on this mission to see how we can make software intelligent. How can we bring some intelligence to software? How can we give it common sense? How can we get it to, think and reason and so on? So I actually took off 5 years to study intelligence.
Wow.
to really deeply understand what is important in intelligence. What is intelligence? How does our intelligence differ from animal intelligence? How do children learn? What do IQ tests measure? And even more fundamental questions of philosophy, of epistemology, theory of knowledge. How do we know anything? What is our relationship to reality? So really deeply understanding knowledge, understanding, and intelligence. And of course, I also studied all the work that had already been done in the field of artificial intelligence to figure that out. And it's over that 5-year period that I came up with a model of intelligence on and how one could build an AI that can think and reason and learn. And that's really what has been consuming me for the last 20 years.
Absolutely amazing, and it's really because of individuals like yourself and entrepreneurs like yourself that we continue to see these types of advancements. We will go further into this, but taking one step back. So you were and I say this with much admiration, that you were a garage entrepreneur, right? You started a business, you grew it, 400 plus employees, had an exit. There's some other would be garage entrepreneurs out there that are thinking about building software, even other things, and the market's changed, like landscape has changed obviously a bit since you first started. Like, what kind of advice would you give to that newer group of entrepreneurs that are maybe just getting their feet wet?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I regret is that I started my first business when I was 25, and I wish I'd done it 5 years earlier, or 8 years earlier, or 10 years earlier. Because there's nothing like actually jumping in and doing it. And, the experience you gain, the confidence you gain, and just what you learn about business, there's really nothing like actually doing it. Yeah. So, anybody who has that kind of personality, ambition, or whatever, just go for it, and could be something small. You could be, you could be partnering up with somebody. It could be part-time, but just get your feet wet and see if this is for you, and learn along the way. And the sooner you can do it, the better. That's sort of my key advice. And if you can find a good partner, it's lonely at the top. So it's a lot easier. But of course, that's a double-edged sword, that if you team up with the wrong partner, then there can also be a lot of drama. But so that would be sort of the key lessons, that going back of what I would do differently.
Wow. I share your sentiment on that one. Like, I got lucky and I found a great partner, but I do wish I had started a business earlier in my life, one that was like more in the full-time realm and not just kind of the side business thing. That's one of my things too. I'm like, I should have started this a little bit earlier, but hey, hindsight, right?
Right.
So let's go further into our discussion. So now you go on this I'll call it a pilgrimage of learning about intelligence and the way we think, if you will. And so now you've gained this expertise. You already had a base to start with. You've gained this expertise, and now you're obviously starting Aigo.ai, and this is all related to intelligence and chatbots and the chatbot landscape just in general. Like, what are you seeing from your vantage point? Like, how did you decide to kind of go further into that space?
Yes, so the field of AI is actually quite interesting, and I think there's a general misunderstanding of what AI is. If we go back to when the term was coined some 60 plus years ago, the idea was to build a thinking machine, a machine that can think and reason and learn the way humans do. That was the original ambition and the initial dream behind AI. But of course, that turned out to be really, really hard. So what happened over the decades is the field of AI turned into narrow AI, solving one particular problem at a time. But there's actually something much deeper going on here. What's actually happened is that instead of building a machine that has the intelligence, it's really the programmer or the data scientist that uses their intelligence to solve the particular problem. So we actually went away from artificial intelligence in the original sense. And, a good example there is, for example, one of the big breakthroughs was, I think, in the 80s or early 90s, with IBM Deep Blue becoming the world chess champion. Now, it was really the programmers who figured out how they could use computer power and specialized algorithms to solve that problem of playing chess. But that chess program couldn't even play checkers. Yeah. It couldn't do anything else. So it was really the intelligence of the programmers behind this that solve the problem on how to use a computer to solve chess. And this is really what AI has been over the decades and is currently, with a Go champion, again, the same. It's a data scientist who figured out how they could use massive amounts of computing power and trying different algorithms to basically become a Go world champion. And so that is the field of AI. And this is one of the realizations after studying intelligence, was that we really want to get back to the original ambition, the original dream of AI. And so in 2001, I got together with some other people who were sort of thinking along the same lines, and we wrote a book on the topic. And we then coined the term, three of us coined the term artificial general intelligence, or AGI, which is now quite commonly referred to as really being going back to the original dream of building thinking machines, where the intelligence resides in the program much more than it does in the programmer. Of course, us as programmers have to use our intelligence to build that machine that can have intelligence. But the whole idea is that you end up with a machine that by itself can learn to play chess and checkers and, solve medical problems and do all sorts of things like that over time. So this is kind of full circle going back to the original dream, and that's basically what we call AGI, artificial general intelligence. So I think that's kind of a big misunderstanding in AI, that all of the image recognition and speech recognition and all of the good things that we do, it's great technology, and people call it AI, so we're not going to change that. Obviously, if you want to raise money, you've got to be an AI company. That at least that's back in fashion now. 10 years ago, AI was actually a dirty word. If you tried to raise money, you wouldn't tell anybody that you were an AI company. But now that's changed. It sort of changes, with the tide. So that's really what the field of AI is largely is narrow AI, and we are obviously doing something different and trying to change that. Now, chatbots also have a long history. They've been around. I mean, simple chatbots, I think, even as far back as the 60s. There was a program, I think it was in the 60s or 70s, program called ELIZA that was actually sort of a psychoanalyst. So you would chat with this program, and it would sort of do a bit of the Freudian thing and say, well, how do you feel about this? And, how did your mother treat you, or whatever, Yeah. And people were actually fooled into believing that was a human on the other side, and it was a simple program, I mean, a few hundred or a few thousand lines of code. And that was sort of the original chatbot idea, essentially a scripted thing, that it would just, if you hear something like that, well, this is how you respond. If you hear something like that, that's how you respond. But no real understanding or intelligence behind it. And, this is like, I think it's the 60s that was, but 60s or 70s. Now, the chatbots today are basically like that. There's no understanding, there's no reasoning, there's no learning happening. So they are dumb chatbots. Now, what has happened in the last decade, let's say the last 8-9 years, is that breakthroughs in deep learning, machine learning, have enabled us to get speech recognition to be much, much better, and also to be able to capture a much wider range of intents, so that if you say, I want the weather, or what's the weather like, or do I need to take an umbrella, or whatever, there could be thousands of ways you might want to ask for a weather report. And basically the technology now with deep learning, machine learning, is that if you can get a long list of these different ways, the way people might ask for something, and then you tag it manually and say, okay, they want weather report, then you can basically use machine learning to build these models that will then recognize your intent. And this really is how Siri and Alexa work, is combining the decades-old scripting, basically a flow chart. If somebody says something like that, that's how you answer it, combining it with this intent recognition or intent categorization. Now, DARPA actually have been given some presentations about what they call the third wave of AI. And what they mean by the three waves of AI is the first wave is sort of logic programming. This would be expert systems and flow charting and things like that. And then the second wave is this deep learning, machine learning, which is, hit us like a tsunami, and is where that's kind of where all the effort and money is going. But that's actually the second wave. The third wave of AI is to have a real brain thinking, and something that can actually reason and deeply understand what's happening, use context, and learn interactively. So, that's obviously what we're interested in, which is sort of, more like AGI is the third wave of AI. And we're just entering that realm now where chatbots are becoming available with a brain behind it, with a cognitive engine.
That's amazing. And what a great lesson. So I was not aware of the difference between AI versus AGI, but the way you explained it makes perfect sense. And I think for me, it's exciting and it's hopeful. So when I think about like companies like yours and this third wave and what that looks like, maybe just start off with telling us a little bit more about Aigo.ai before we go further into the conversation.
Yeah. So, of course, with what I've just spoken about, what our company is about is we call it a chatbot with a brain.
Yeah.
Whereas all the other chatbots out there don't have a brain. Some of the things that the brain does is it gives you deeper understanding of what the person is saying. It uses context of what was said before. What is the conversation about? What does the person already know? What have you already spoken about? It uses memory. So it remembers what you said. It remembers what you said earlier in the conversation. It remembers what you said in prior conversations. And it can do a certain amount of reasoning about things and has common sense, a certain degree of common sense. Not at human level yet, but it has some. So by having a brain or having a cognitive engine that actually drives your chat, you have a totally different experience.
Wow.
Now, without the brain, I mean, imagine you hired an assistant that, like you have a digital assistant, but you hired a human assistant now. Yeah. And imagine they didn't remember what you said 2 sentences ago.
Yeah.
Or they just listened to the pattern. You said, I hate Uber, don't ever give me Uber again. And they just latched onto the word Uber and said, oh, you want me to get you Uber?
Yeah, right.
I mean, this is basically how chatbots currently work. They just latch onto keywords or key patterns and without any deeper understanding. And, as I say, how long would a human assistant last if they didn't remember what you said 2 sentences ago, or if they didn't understand, So that's what our company is about, and we focused on chatbots. Having conversation is obviously a huge demand for that. And I use the word chatbot loosely here because really what we are offering and what we're catering for, and we can talk about that later, is anywhere where a conversation is held and where you could potentially automate that, where you have conversational AI. And, chat is just a huge area that more and more people want to interact via chat rather than waiting on the phone, waiting to speak to an agent or, dealing with frustrating automated phone systems. And the younger generation inherently prefers text, to talking. You can do it asynchronously. You can ask a question, and if you respond 10 minutes later, nobody worries, whereas with a phone conversation, it's sort of synchronous. So because there is a big push towards your chat conversation in customer support and so on, that's what we decided to focus on. And our company focus at the moment entirely on large enterprise customers. Because you really want to integrate the system deeply into the company, so that you have as much information about the products, about the customer, about the current state, availability, or, whatever it might be. And that deep integration obviously does take some effort. You need to understand the company's business practices and rules. You need to have APIs to integrate it. But that is ultimately what will give you a much better customer experience, a much better customer satisfaction. So in a way, what we're providing is a corporate brain that has a lot of knowledge about the company and about its practices and its customers. and can then offer much better service. So once that brain has been implemented to say do one application for the company, then it's a lot easier to add other things. For example, if it's a bank, they might start up with one application, but then keep adding more and more capabilities to that. And also the way we do it is quite different. We are not a SaaS service. So we actually deploy Aigo, the Aigo brains, behind the customer's firewall, which makes integration easier, and obviously there are a lot fewer security concerns because the chat knowledge, the chat logic, and so on, the brain is behind the customer's firewall so that they feel comfortable with that. So that's what Aigo.ai is focusing on right now, is large enterprise customers who are looking to automate conversational AI. And that could be customer facing, or it could be internal, to either help their call center agents to be more effective, or it could be for their staff for things like HR support or IT support or training, or anything like that.
Yeah, and that whole idea of putting it behind their firewall, it seems like for bigger institutions, especially financial institution, banks, things like this, or biotech, like a lot of these other institutions. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of opportunity there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously we've also seen a few pretty major disasters where SaaS companies go offline. Yeah. And then, it impacts just so many different companies, so that's kind of another advantage.
So this explanation you gave of the chatbot, is I'm sitting here thinking about it, like, so when you think about a chat bot thinking, like something like memory, when you start breaking down the components of what it takes to think, to use that previous thought and to use that in future dialogue, like it makes perfect sense. And to me, I'm optimistic and hopeful. So I'm like, wow. So one day I'll probably go on to XYZ bank, I'll log in, I'll have a question, I'll ask a question, and it'll possibly remember the last question I asked or the last part of the conversation, and possibly get to learn some of my behavior in the future, just to make that experience like that much better. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly right. So, and that's what we're doing right now. We're using memory. So, I mean, you could think about the sort of normal frustration that you have if you're trying to solve a problem. You might have a claim, a bank claim, or some query that you have that requires some iterations, or take a telco, your internet is down, and call up service people, and they say, well, where's your router? Have you tried rebooting your router? Oh, my router's in the kitchen. Well, have you tried moving it here? How far away are the things? So you're having a conversation, and then they say, well, try that. Okay, so you then hang up. You go and try that. You reboot. You move your router, or whatever it might be. Yeah. And then you call back, no, this didn't work. And you start your conversation from scratch. Now, with Aigo, it will remember. It'll be like talking to the same person you spoke to before. And not only that, they'll actually remember you. Yeah. They'll know, say, oh, okay, did you move it? Did you move your router to the kitchen? And they won't ask you again to reboot it, because you've already done that 3 times, that didn't help. So you can really have that hyper-personalized ongoing conversation, whether that's now in banking or some retail delivery, or the case of a telco or whatever. So that's exactly the kinds of things you can do when you have a chatbot with a brain.
What kind of responses have you heard on this technology, like from the clients that you've implemented on? Like, what kind of feedback have you gotten?
Yeah. So there's kind of a related interesting question is, often our customers will ask us to set up the system that it sounds just like a human, and that basically you're trying to, they believe that customers want to talk to a human. Yeah. We actually push back on that. We don't think that's a good philosophy at all. So we always encourage our customers to be upfront and say, this is an AI. It's a smart AI. But it's an AI. You're not talking to a human, you're talking to an AI. And sort of the related thing is there's also the sentiment that people prefer to talk to a human, but that's not actually the case. I think studies have shown And even from your own experience,
I don't prefer it. I have.
You just want to get stuff done.
I love chatbots.
You just want to get it done. Yeah. You don't want to talk about the weather or the sport. Every time I get
on the system, I'm like, and if a chatbot can answer my question, I'm like, oh, come on, little guy, you can do it. Like I try to, because they're getting smarter and smarter. Like I can see it. Like I can see it through time. Like they've just gotten better. So go ahead. I just had to say that I'm one of those people. I prefer the chatbot.
Exactly. People just want to get stuff done. Mm-hmm. So, and of course, with the advantages, as I said, that it can remember when you called in last time. There's no wait time. It's not like waiting half an hour to talk to an agent. Can talk anytime, 24/7. There's not sort of the luck of the draw. Are you going to get connected to a really rude agent, human agent, or somebody who hasn't been trained properly, or who's bored, or whatever? You're going to have a very consistent performance. So I think there's a lot of advantages. But to your question is, how do people respond to it? I mean, we often have people just thanking us for getting things sorted out so quickly and easily, But we also have to remember that it's not human level intelligence. We're not there yet. We're working very hard to keep increasing the IQ, but there are a lot of things that the current technology can help people with. And then the trick is for those things that you can't help, for whatever reasons, maybe it requires a supervisor to make a decision on how to handle a particular situation, or there may just be other reasons for needing a human. Then the important thing is that whatever information the chatbot has gathered already is handed over, in an intelligible way to the human agent, and that they can then seamlessly take over. So that's another application quite often, is just to help the human agents, already, do authentication, get background information from what the issue is, who the customer is, what product they have, and, all of that. So, just lots of opportunities.
So we've talked a bit about how how the customers can be helped through this type of technology with Aigo. And you said it briefly, but maybe an example, or I want to go further with this, is how big these big companies, these enterprise level companies, can use the chatbot function in this AI internally to help their internal clients, which is their employees, whether it's through HR or otherwise. Can you talk a little bit more and expand on that a bit?
Yes. So I think that sort of two categories of applications here. The one is within the call center itself, where you can have an Aigo, or an intelligent agent basically listen in on the conversation, or the chat, and then help the agent in terms of formulating a response, because the AI can potentially do an order lookup, find out exactly what the status is, and what the different options may be, and how you can expedite it or whatever.
Wow.
And they can then pop that up on the screen for the human agent to say, okay, here are the three options or the three types of responses that you might want to give, but with the customer details already filled out, so that they don't have to type it, So it'll help if they may not be that familiar with a certain situation, but also just to speed up the process. And of course, the magic behind that is, if you do also have automated chat, then this chat assistant is also learning.
Exactly. I was just thinking that, like, it's going to know. Based
it's learning,
on the
because if you always, if the agent in a certain circumstance always picks the second option that you present, then, the AI can learn that, okay, next time I'll know how to handle that, So that's also a benefit. So it can help humans be more efficient in their customer support, and it can train the AI
awesome.
At the same time. Yeah. So that's a super exciting use case. And then, of course, the other thing is just companies that have a lot of employees, HR and IT support can be a huge thing. And, you also have things like training, kind of HR related, where you can then have a chatbot to basically help with those functions. There's another specialized application that's also super exciting, and that is in sales. Now, as you probably know, salespeople hate updating Salesforce,
Yeah.
It's not the kind of thing they don't
CRM
like to do.
Updating is not a favorite for anyone.
They don't like to do, paperwork basically, and they don't particularly want to share the information they have and so on. It's a hassle. So one of the really exciting applications for Aigo is to have a sales assistant. So imagine now, as a salesperson, you can, before the call, you can say to Aigo, hey, remind me about this next call. What a product is the person interested in? And what are their hobbies? Do they have any kids? What do you know about the person? So you can kind of get that background information easily, having to go through menus and plow through things and so on. So you can get that apart from getting the reminders. But then when you're done with your sales call, you can just say to Aigo, hey, remind me next Tuesday to follow up with this client.
Wow.
Send them brochure X and let my boss know what's going on, and
wow.
Then Aigo will update the CRM. So that application, we call that a co-pilot, where Aigo is used as the interface to software.
Yeah.
And that could be any software really, but, Salesforce is an obvious one, but a complex ERP software is the same thing, where people might need to navigate lots of things, or business intelligence software where you need to go down menus and fill out things. You could potentially just in natural language tell the software what you want it to do. And then Aigo will, know what to do. So those are very exciting applications that we're working on with some clients.
Man, this is exciting, and I love the idea that as the machines, as the chatbots, as the different programs become smarter, and like the humans teaching is teaching Aigo's teaching is helping out the human. It's like we're working together here. Like this is, I guess, when you talk about like the original idea of AI, which now is AGI, like that, I believe was the dream. Yeah.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And it's really super exciting. And I mean, I couldn't imagine wanting to work on anything else. Is to build systems that are increasingly intelligent and helpful to people. One of the big clients we have, retail commerce, 1-800-Flowers, and their vision was to have a hyper-personalized concierge service, so that you have your own chatbot basically that can help you, buy gifts, that will remember the people you buy gifts for, what occasions you buy them for, and what kind of products they're interested in, what they liked, what they didn't like, and so on. So the vision of the top management at 1-800-Flowers was to be able to give the kind of service they gave when they started the company, when they were a flower shop and they knew their customers. They would walk in and they would know them personally. So how do you do that for 10 million or 20 million customers? You can do it with the right kind of AI to have that hyper-personalized concierge assistant that's really yours, to help you get things done in the company. And that's just a super exciting application that we have. And it's like I mentioned earlier, it's like implementing a corporate brain. You implement the Aigo brain behind the firewall, integrated with the back-end systems, so that the brain has access to customer information, product information, delivery information, FedEx, and so on. And then you can provide increasing amount of service to your customer as the chatbot knows more and more. And you quickly get to a point where the chatbot actually can be more helpful than a human agent, because it has all of that information at its fingertips, and it remembers previous conversations and can use that. So it can really be hyper-personalized, which the human agent couldn't quickly get that much background information and context. So that's one of the applications that we just really super excited about, to help ultimately the individual customer have a much better experience.
Oh, I can see it. And even when you talk about like the individual agent, like currently you'd have to go back, you'd have to read the notes, you'd have to figure it out. You'd have to see, okay, you called on this day, or okay, is it the same problem, or was this problem already handled? Like all these things. where, if Aigo can kind of sift through that maybe a little bit easier, or a little bit more, make it a little bit more succinct or better journey. The client doesn't have to repeat themselves. I mean, again, just one example. Wow, what an amazing experience. I guess, me being what I do all day long, I got to ask, so am I going to have like an Aigo help me do some interviews? Come on, listening in and help me ask some questions. What are you thinking? Is that on the horizon?
Yes, absolutely. If that's what you want, that's
awesome.
Definitely the kind of thing that we're working towards. Just to mention another benefit on having automation for that is, of course, to deal with peak periods. Now whether that's a telco with an outage, or a bank where suddenly some policy has changed, the government announces that they now, whatever, the interest rates have changed, or that the loan's available or something. So you suddenly get a deluge of calls. Or Mother's Day, you're obviously going to have a lot more people calling in to order flowers, So that's the other huge advantage of automation is, of course, that it's kind of infinitely scalable, with the right system. So
especially on the finance side, when we're talking, think of like the flash crash, or like when we had like Facebook. When I remember, people probably don't remember this. I do remember it because I was working in finance at this time when Facebook IPO'd, and everything, you couldn't get a phone call. It just all skyrocketed, right? And all these other like things that, that can potentially really be systemic and harm the system. Now, when you have that infinitely scalable system, as you mentioned, it's like, wow, it can really take stress off the system. That's amazing.
Right. And we are really industry agnostic with our technology. Obviously, for any given application, you need to give it the background information, or what's called an ontology. So basically the terms and the concepts that are needed for a given application, which is very different from, for example, in medical field, we're talking to some companies about a diabetes coach. People have diabetes, where Aigo will be their personalized coach, which can help them with their menu, their diet, their diet, and just generally help them manage their diabetes. So you have that application, which obviously has its specific knowledge that it has. We also have interest from educational institutions, where the students could have a personal Aigo that could help them around on campus, and then the faculty will have that. So again, they will have their specialized knowledge that's required to do that. So for that reason, we actually work with channel partners that already have a lot of expertise, in banking or insurance or whatever medical field it might be. And they can then help implement Aigo. They have the customer relationship, they have the domain knowledge, and they can help us do that. And then we work with companies on an OEM level, where Aigo is actually integrated into the product itself. So those are kind of the three channels. We work directly with enterprise customers, work with partners in specific vertical markets, and then OEMs to integrate Aigo into the product.
Well, Peter, I'll tell you, this has been great. I know you're like Aigo, busy guy, a lot of things going on, implementing this for different enterprises and helping them, again, internally, externally. Your example with 1-800-Flowers, I mean, that was awesome. And it just puts it in perspective, like what is really possible. And I know you, as you mentioned, the AGI movement, this third wave is still, it's still in its beginning, so to speak, and the possibilities, a lot of possibilities. And I'm excited you're working on it, we're getting more things done. So what's next? I mean, what's next for you? What's next for Aigo.ai? I have to ask, what's next?
Yeah, so it's continuing on the path that we're on, and we're super excited about that. I mean, as I say, I embarked on this journey 20 years ago. We actually commercialized the first generation of our product in 2008, so quite a while ago. So we already have a lot of experience with this third wave, but we are still very much at the forefront of AGI-like systems and the third wave. So for us, it's very much a focus on continuing to increase the IQ of the system, which is what we're actively doing. But the other thing that's exciting is sort of relates back to the to the question you asked me, could you have an Aigo help you with what you're doing?
Yes.
We're very excited about the longer term where the Aigos will not be so much owned by the companies, or that won't be the important thing, but they'll be owned by the individual.
Wow.
And we call that concept a personal assistant. Now, the reason we double up on the word personal, in fact, it should be personal assistant, and I'll explain why that is. There are really three important aspects or meanings of the word personal. The first one is it's yours. You own it. You control it. So, that it would be yours, not some mega corporation to serve their agenda, but it's yours to serve your own personal agenda. The second personal is the personalization bit, or the customization. It's personalized to you. It's customized to you. It learns your preferences, what's important to you, and what you want done. And then the third personal is the issue of privacy. There are things that are personal to you that you want to keep to yourself. So you decide what Aigo shares with whom.
Yeah.
So in the longer run, we see more and more of our effort actually being, to personal assistance. We're already seeing a little bit like in the Salesforce example.
Yeah.
As the salesperson, you have an Aigo for work. You probably also want to use it at home,
Totally.
Remind me to pick up the kids on the way. And then your partner will probably want an Aigo as well.
Yeah.
Or in universities, the students have used an Aigo for 3 or 4 years. They then go out in the world. They obviously want to continue using an Aigo. So yes, ultimately, I think if we can, our vision is if we can have, 7 billion people, have an Aigo to help them fulfill their own personal goals and dreams, to help them improve their lives, basically do things for them, give them advice, and just generally optimize their lives. That's what's next.
This makes me happy because when I asked you the question, I thought I was just being selfish and I just wanted one. And I'm glad to know it's already on your mind because I do want one. So I'm glad you're already working on this, Peter. So as I mentioned, this has been great. I'm excited to continue to watch Aigo.ai and to see all the work you're doing and to help clients and companies. That being said, if somebody's watching this right now and they want to learn more about Aigo.ai, what's the best way for them to connect with your team?
Yeah, simplest is just our website, Aigo.ai, and links to articles. I have quite a lot of articles about ethics and AI and the future and free will and all sorts of things on medium.com, but that's also linked from our website. And obviously we're on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, and so on. But it's easy to find me. But Peter@Aigo.ai.
Awesome. Well, Peter, again, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about your background and all the work you're doing over at Aigo. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. Hope you learned a lot. I know I did, and I'm excited about this Aigo. If you did, don't forget, hit that subscribe button, especially if you're a first-time listener or visitor. We want you to be a return visitor. We have many more mission-based entrepreneurs, executive, and experts for you coming up, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Peter, thanks again for coming on the show. It has been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun. Thank you.